Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Carrie Ann Conversations Journey to Wellness. I'm so excited that you guys have all joined me here today. This is a very exciting day. And if there's anything that I've learned in the past year, it is that in order to achieve wellness, you have to do the work. I learned this from my health struggles last year. You have to stop, you have to listen to yourself, and you have to do the work. Hi, San Francisco. That's why I decided to start this new episode or this new series, Carrie Ann Conversations, Journey to Wellness, because I wanted to share with you the things that I've learned from this experience. I have thought leaders, I have doctors, I have experts, I've got influencers, and I've got friends. All of them have helped me on this incredible road to wellness, and the goal is to share it all with you. So thank you for joining me. Okay, can you tell I'm nervous because I'm super excited? So I'm kicking things off today with someone who is by my side during my own road to recovery in 2021. He's a physician, a best-selling author, and a brain health specialist. I'm reading this because I want to get it right. A brain health specialist who forever changed the way I approach my own health. And he has been so important and such a great friend through all of this. Please welcome founder of Amen Clinics and author of the new book, You Happier, Dr. Daniel Amen. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hello, Carrie Ann. So great to see you.
It's so great to have you. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate this.
You are welcome.
All right. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and to share it with everyone here today. So thank you for being my first ever guest on Carrie Ann Conversations, Journey to Wellness. Happy 2022. Let's start with what is your goal for 2022? Let's just start there real quick.
To keep doing what I do, to make a difference in the lives of a lot of people, to love my family, and to live forever. So to make decisions so that I have clarity and energy.
All right, y'all, did you hear that? And we're going to get to how we make those things happen in a second. And Dr. Amen, I wish all of that for you. And I know you know how to achieve it because you've helped me achieve these goals in my own life as well. Dr. Amen, Maria is saying you're awesome. Okay, so let's get started. All right. Okay, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and share it with everybody because you've helped me so much. And to get everybody kind of on the same page, I met Dr. Amen last year in May. And it was right when I had taken my hiatus from the talk because I was very ill and I wasn't able to go to work. And that's like the first time in my entire life that that's really happened in that way. And when I came to him, I was in the worst flare-up of my life. Do you remember? It was terrible. And I had been to see all these specialists, a cranial sacral specialist. I had gotten 7 MRIs. I had neurological testing. The pain was so immense. They were trying to put me on Percocet. And that didn't even work. And so I knew I had to make a shift and make a change. And so I had a friend who knows Dr. Amen as well. We had a mutual friend. And I remember her talking about this man who did these brain scans. And I remember thinking at the time it was so interesting. But I wasn't in need. But in that moment, I remember thinking to myself, I am in need because something's wrong and I'm not okay. And so I remember I got your number and I reached out to you. And I remember you were watching Game of Thrones. Do you remember? You were like, I'm watching Game of Thrones. Do you remember?
I do.
And
I was watching it for like the 3rd time. And so I'm like, Carrie Ann Inaba, I'd much rather talk to her. So I called you.
You were so sweet. And you took the call and we started talking. And then before we even met, you asked me to go get my brain scan, which I did. And it's a SPECT scan now. So let's start with that, Dr. Amen. Can you tell everybody about the SPECT scan and why you scan people's brains?
So I'm a psychiatrist by training, and most psychiatrists never look at the brain, which 30 years ago I thought, well, that's insane because it's the organ I'm trying to help. So I was introduced to this technology 30 years ago and have subsequently scanned. We have a database of 200,000 scans on people from 155 countries. And SPEC basically tells us 3 things. Good activity, too little or too much. And then my job is to balance it. And at the time, you were anxious and you were sad and your life was overwhelmed and you felt awful. Well, I wanted to get a look at how your brain worked, right? You could tell me your symptoms, but you couldn't tell me how your brain was functioning. And we discovered it was hurt and it was really sleepy in activity. And that gave us direction on some of the things we would then do for it.
Yeah, I was confused, and also I had COVID brain, and I didn't know what to do. And after we saw my brain scans, I was blown away. So we scanned my brain, and what we saw was, do you want to tell them, or should I tell them that there was a little evidence of a traumatic brain injury, a little bit of a concussion is this the prefrontal cortex?
It is.
I'm learning from the best. And then that my temporal lobes, which should look like puffy clouds, mine looked like little rickety, like a little finger like this, like a little nub. And then this one was like a claw. And there was not a lot of activity in the areas where there should be activity. And most of the activity was in my limbic brain,
Right.
Which, doctor, now explain what that means. And what did you diagnose me with at that time? What did you tell me that I had?
So the limbic part of your brain is your emotional brain. So it was like your emotional brain was on fire, but your temporal lobes, learning, memory, mood stability were really low in blood flow and activity, and your frontal lobes really low in activity. And so then we began to go, I wonder if she has ADD. And that actually became very important over time. So concussion, depression, ADD, COVID brain. And what I've seen with COVID brain is it really can fire up your emotional brain. And about 20% of the people who have COVID will then develop either anxiety or depression or both. And I have before and after scans, people before they got COVID and after they got COVID. And I was shocked by how much inflammation actually happens in the emotional centers of the brain. So we had work to do.
He's being kind. We had to get the bulldozer and the big guns to get to work. And we did. And what you've taught me is that the most important thing about what we know as mental health is actually what you like to call brain health, and focusing on the wellness of your brain. And for somebody like me, and I have a lot of followers out there who also have autoimmune conditions, and like I have lupus and fibromyalgia, and I have the Sjogren's syndrome, and I have antiphospholipid syndrome. And we tend to try really hard to get well, but we're going all over the place, right? We're reaching at like anything that could make us feel better, because when you have a flare up, it's so painful and it's so debilitating, and it's like you lose your life to these diseases and the inflammation. And what was so powerful is that you helped me understand how to focus all my efforts into one area, which was to focus first and foremost and mostly on my brain health. And in doing that, I was able to create a plan to get myself back together, which we can go over in a second, because you helped me create this plan, and it was so powerful and so helpful that this is why I want to share it with everybody. And it just made it very cohesive for me. And that's like, I'm so grateful for that, because I was putting the effort in. I'm willing to put the effort in, but I was going nowhere. So would you mind sharing with everybody how you helped me? What was the plan that you put me on?
Well, whenever someone's diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, it tells you what it is. It doesn't tell you why it is. And, I think one of the most important things we did is we got curious about what was happening to you and not furious. We began to see, well, what triggers it and what settles it down. And for you, food was a really big part of what triggers it. I mean, obviously, all of us during the pandemic are under a lot of stress, but you were in a very stressful time in your life, so it's not a big surprise that the flare happened. So our plan was basically three things. The first thing was love your brain. So now we could see it, and it's a concept I call brain envy. Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. It's brain envy. I want you to love your brain. And whenever you do something, you ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And then, you and I spend a lot of time talking about, well, certain things, they're not really good for your brain, whether it's alcohol or sugar or not sleeping or believing every negative thought you have. And so brain envy is number one. Two is let's start avoiding anything that hurts our brain. And we talked about that. And then engage in regular brain healthy habits. And, and so what medications can help, what supplements can help, what's the right food, the right exercise. And for you, I think one of the most powerful things we did was go through every year of your life, looking at what was stressful, but also what was great, what was awesome. Too often when people do therapy, they talk about all the garbage in their life and they end up feeling worse. Well, you are so accomplished that it's critical to not let your mind just go to what's dark, but also to balance it with the light. And then there's so many parts of the story that are so important, but I figured out because of the concussion you had that you also had something called Irlen syndrome, which is a visual processing disorder where certain colors of light would irritate your brain and trigger things like headaches. And you're trying to read teleprompters when the lights from the studio were making you miserable. And so I sent you to my friend, Helen Irlen, and that made a big difference. But as people are listening, this is not, oh, you're depressed, take an antidepressant. It's like, no. It's like, let's really understand Carrie Ann and get all of these factors working together, from repairing the concussion with hyperbaric oxygen to treating the depression and the pain, which was really important, to diagnosing and treating Irlen syndrome. And then you became a master anteater. Love that part, where you learn not to believe every stupid thing that came into your head.
Right. And speaking of every stupid thing that came into my head, one of those things that you mentioned earlier about making the list of my life, and it's funny because mostly I had focused only on the traumas, which was fascinating to me, and I thought that's what you were looking for. But what you were really trying to teach me is to look at my life in a better, more balanced way and not be a negative thought queen, which is what I was. I mean, Dr. Amen had me name the negative part in my brain, and we gave her a little name, Psycho Sandy, in the back of my head. And whenever something comes up, I would tend to look for the negative as like a survival instinct, a survival mechanism. And I would also kind of be mean to myself in the way I was talking to myself. So when all of this was happening, I was a mess. And when I was at the talk, and when I was considering whether I should go back to the talk, right, because I was still on hiatus when I came to you, we discussed it at great length. And one of the problems was when my brain wasn't treated, I hadn't been treating the ADHD. I hadn't been doing enough physical exercise to keep my brain balanced. I wasn't eating well to keep my brain balanced. I wasn't eating well to keep my inflammation down. I wasn't doing anything with discipline for my brain health. And so with my brain not being balanced, I was a mess, and it was very difficult, would have been very difficult for me to go back. And so I know a lot of people tuned in to find out why I left the talk. And the reason why I left the talk was I wanted to focus on my health. There was just not, I did the math. Is there going to be enough hours in the day for me to focus on what Dr. Amen has taught me to do, which I had started to do and I was seeing great results with? Could I go back to the talk in time for the fall season? And I had to decide that I couldn't, because I realized if I wanted to live a great life, the life that we all deserve to live, the life that we all have a right to live, I would have to take the time and focus on my health. And so with all of your guidance, I've been able to do that. And now going back to the negative thoughts, I just want to share something with you. I want to ask you something actually. There was, when I left the talk, one of the negative thoughts, so we can give people at home a real world example. One of the negative thoughts that I had, these automatic negative thoughts, otherwise known as ants, was that it was my fault that what happened to the talk with Sharon Osbourne and everybody, what happened in the way the show kind of just like imploded at that moment, that it was my fault. And you helped me understand that I was not, that was like a negative thought. And why does our brain do this? It wasn't my fault. And after all the therapy that I've been doing with you, by the way, he's been working with me this whole time. He's my psychiatrist as well. I want you guys all to know the real relationship here. It's been amazing and it's such a blessing. But why does our brain do this? Why do we have these negative thoughts? Why did I do that to myself instead of just was?
You know, thoughts come from all sorts of places. They come from our genes. They actually get transmitted through generations. They come from the news we listen to, the voices from our mom or dad, our friends and foes. And when there's early trauma, we develop, and you and I have talked about this, magical thinking. Like, you know, I'm so powerful. If something good happens, it's because of me. Or if something bad happens, it's my fault. And even though, you know, if you were talking to a friend about the situation because you're a very kind, loving person, there's no way you go, you're right, that was your fault. You know, you really help walk them through it in a rational way, but you weren't able to do that with yourself. And that's one of the most important strategies, is learn how to step out of yourself. And, you know, Sandy the Psycho, it's a technique I use called give your mind a name, right? So you can psychologically distance from the noise in your head, that you don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. And it's just such an important concept that we should actually teach children how to question their negative thinking. I actually have a book called Captain Snout and the Superpower Questions. It's a kid's book on teaching kids to question. But, you know, as you see, we're working on brain health. We're working on your psychology. We're working on social connections and ultimately spiritual connections, which is, well, why am I on the planet? You know, what's my sense of purpose? And doing this life together, I mean, it's totally in the center of your purpose, because you are a healer and you're sharing your healing journey with other people.
Yes, I am definitely sharing my healing journey with other people. Thank you for all that you just said. And one of the things Dr. Amen, you heard him speak about, is the spiritual side and sort of the social side. And that is something called the one-page miracle that we're going to get to in a second. And that will help you all as you set your intentions for the new year. I promise. Dr. Amen put me to work. I just want to tell you guys, like, he put me to work. He made me make lists, not made me. He offered that these would be helpful, and I chose to do it. And it was amazing. And so, but one of the first books he asked me to read, first of all, I suggest reading all of his books. They're so much fun. They're not difficult reading. It's not all this jibber jab. I don't understand, but he's chucking words that have more than 25 letters. It's simple. simple solutions to simple solutions to complex problems. This is what he has done and made it so basic. I think it's because you work a lot with children, isn't it, Dr. Amen? Because you really make it fun. And because I'm a child at heart, and we know that I'm still like 12 or maybe 4, it has really appealed to me. So one of the books is Your Brain is Always Listening. And he talks about what we just discussed, which are the dragons, and how we have like ancestral dragons and all these different ways that lead to these automatic negative thoughts. And Dr. Amen, I just want you to share the 5 questions. When somebody is having a negative thought, you taught me these 5 questions that really help you challenge yourself, because we have to challenge ourselves when we're being negative. What are those thoughts, or what are those questions, and how can we avoid a negative thought?
So a thought might be, I made things at the talk worse. I mean, that might be one of the thoughts. And the first question is, well, is that true? And you might go, yes, because you're believing Psycho Sandy. The second question is it absolutely true with 100% certainty? It just makes you really reflect on it, and you're like, no, it's way more complicated than that. And then third question is, how do I feel when I believe the thought? Awful. The fourth question is, how would I feel without the thought? And you would say free. And the fifth question is, take the original thought, I created these problems, turn it to the opposite, which is I didn't create these problems, and then look for truth in the opposite of the thought that is actually bothering you. I got these questions from my friend Byron Katie. They're so powerful. They're so good. And if we can just learn, I don't have any tattoos on my body, but if I got one, I would get a tattoo of these 5 questions, because that gives you happiness. It gives you peace when you just don't have to attach. It's not the thoughts you have that make you suffer. It's the thoughts you attach to that make you suffer. And if you can learn not to attach, especially to lies, you're just going to be a happier human.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody was asking, what's the name of that book again? I just want to reiterate, Your Brain is Always Listening. But another great book is The End of Mental Illness. There's so many. But now I want to move on to your newest book that's coming out in March. Is that right? March
1st.
March 1st. This is it, guys. We have an exclusive. I've got an early copy. You Happier. The 7 Neuroscience Secrets of Feeling Good Based on Your Brain Type. Now, okay, I just think about this title and it makes me happy. And I'm so excited because I know you're going to help so many people with this book, and everybody that I talk to would love to be happier. We have been through such a difficult 2 years, and some of us have been struggling even longer than that. I mean, me with my undiagnosed depression and ADD, and I've been struggling my whole life, and the tools that you've given me has just helped me so much. Okay, so I get emotional when I talk to you because you've helped me so much. Okay, so I want to just ask you about this book. So, well, first of all, let me ask, what are some of the warning signs that indicate that your brain health needs attention?
Well, if you're unhappy, because happiness is a brain function. If your memory is worse than it was 10 years ago, if you have low energy, if you're making bad decisions, because ultimately it's the quality of your decisions that determine your health and happiness. But decision making is a brain function. If you're not sleeping, if you're snoring loudly at night, all of those things can indicate trouble.
Wait, why snoring?
Because sleep apnea actually triples the risk for Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, wow. So basically you're saying if you snore a lot, you might want to go get that checked.
You might want to get it checked. It's very important.
Okay, so what can someone do today to start being happier?
Well, in the book, I talk about 7 things. The most important of all of them, the foundational secret of happiness, that virtually none of because there are a lot of happiness books, but none of them talk about, it's brain health. I actually did a study on 500 consecutive patients, and I gave them the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, and I compared the high happiness people with the low happiness people. And the low happiness people had low activity in their frontal lobe, sort of like you when I first met you. And people don't realize is if I get my brain better, well, I'm happier. And happiness is a moral obligation. It's not like a nice thing to do. It's a moral obligation because of how you impact other people. And just ask anybody who was raised by an unhappy parent or married to an unhappy spouse, whether or not happiness is a moral obligation. And I guarantee you they will say yes. And so this is not about selfishness. It's about altruism because of how we impact other people.
Oh, I love that. I so agree with that, that people, when you're happy, you spread happiness. It's like contagious. So you do have an obligation. If you want to be a good person in this world, start with you. Start with you. You've really taught me that. I thought I was dealing with me, but I think I was making everybody first in line. I think I was actually back of the bus, thinking I was taking care of myself. Let me ask you, okay, let's do a rating thing real quick. On a scale of 1 to 10, where was my happiness when I first met you? Before the work?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Oh, look, I filled out all these forms and I did the happiness challenge. Oh, we're going to talk about that too. And yeah, it was about a 2. So where do you think I am now after 8 months of working together?
I think you're like an 8. I mean, ultimately, you should say it, but you know, I mean, there's still ups and downs, but every time there's a down, we investigate it. We're like detectives on Carrie Ann. And you are such a good patient. I mean, I adore you for so many reasons, but you do what I ask you to do. And, you know, often that's what I tell my patients, just like do it. Because, you know, I have like 40 years of experience. If you do this, we're going to make progress. And you do it, which just makes my work so much easier.
Thank you. So what grade level do I get for, what grade do I get for, or on a scale, how do you rate me as a patient?
Oh, you get an A.
Yay!
Yeah, no, you're a 10. And
Bruno, Len, watch out. I got a 10. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that. And I will tell you that Dr. Amen was incorrect about one thing, though. He said right now I'm about an 8, but the truth is I feel a 10 right now in happiness. And that's because I'm doing this interview with you right now, and we're getting to share all of these amazing things. We're going to end with a viewer question then. Here it is. My thought patterns, if this is a viewer from Melanie, named Melanie, she says, my thought patterns and therefore actions have been described to me by people more than once as all over the place. Not sure why I am this way, but I would like to understand it better and fix it. What do you say to her, Dr. Amen?
well, so you understand about having your thoughts all over the place. It's a common symptom with ADD. So I'd get that checked. And it also can be from a potential head injury. And so I think having, you know, one of the things you can do, simple thing people can do. In fact, if they go to youhappier.com, they can pre-order the book and get a whole bunch of immediate benefits, including my wife's new cookbook, the You Happier cookbook, and get enrolled into our 30-day challenge, which we were going to talk about. I know you had done our 30-day challenge. And I saw one question in the feed. It's like, did you get your brain scanned again? And the answer was yes. You know, as your brain heals, your mind heals as well.
I want to remind everyone that Dr. Amen's new book, You Happier, comes out in March and is currently available for pre-order. Dr. Amen, I just want to thank you so much. The information is going to be below, by the way. Thank you so much for joining me today. You are amazing. You have helped my life immensely. And I do believe that this Carrie Ann conversation today, Journey to Wellness, you will be helping many more people. And I wish you the best best 2022. And thank you so much for all that you've done for me. I'm happier than I've ever been.
You're so welcome. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
I will talk to you soon. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Dr. Amen is fantastic, don't you think? I want to thank you all for joining me on my first ever episode of Carrie Ann Conversations, Journey to Wellness. This has been a very exciting day for me. I really appreciate that you all tuned in. Dr. Amen was fantastic. I hope that you gained something and learned something for your own journey of wellness. And I hope that you will continue the dialogue. Please like if you liked it, share, comment below, let me know your thoughts. We really appreciate you. And I wish you all a wonderful 2022. And tune in next Thursday live. We're going to have an amazing conversation, and we're going to talk a little bit about Sjogren's syndrome for some of you who don't know. So what that is. So I'll see you then. Thank you all, and I want you to stay well and be kind to yourself. Mwah. Have a beautiful day, and thank you to my supervising producer right here, Rudy Robles. Yay! Dream team in the house. All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Love you. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves.